Staff in Tallinn were confronted by a UFO. It could also be the work of an underground civilization called the Lizard People. Recently, while looking for information, I found something interesting on the CIA website. Today I'm going to tell you about the strange cloud UFO incident in the former Soviet Union. The incident took place at 4:10 a.m. on January 30, 1985 in the former Soviet Union. There was a flight crew that reported a UFO sighting. Moscow's labor newspaper also reported the story. The story goes like this. A Tu-134 flight number 8352 from the Georgian capital Tbilisi via the Russian city of Rostov en route to Tallinn, the capital of Essania. The plane was operated by a team from the Essania administration of the former Soviet Civil Aviation Administration. The pilot was Igor Alexeyevich Cherkashin, a graduate of the Bucharest Flight School with 7,000 hours of flying time and a first-class pilot. The pilot was Gennady Ivanovich Razalin, a graduate of the Sassovo Pilot School and a recipient of the Order of the Lenin Academy of Civil Aviation, with a cumulative flight time of 4,500 hours and a second-class pilot. The pilot was Yegor Mikhailovich Ognev, who also received the Order of the Lenin Civil Aviation Academy, with a cumulative flight time of about 3,500 hours, and was a pilot second class. The flight engineer is Gennady Mikhailovich Kozlov, who has accumulated 12,500 flight hours and is a first-class flight engineer. At 4:10 a.m., when they were 120 kilometers from Minsk, the co-pilot noticed a large, pentagonal, cone-sized yellow spot stretching along the edge, above their right and not flashing. But it's not a star, it's just light refraction or some other phenomenon in the atmosphere. Next, a very thin beam shoots out of the spot and falls vertically, and then the pilot nudges the flight engineer next to him. The engineer glanced outside and said, "Captain, we have to report this to the ground." However, the light suddenly changed into bright, luminous vertebrae. From that moment on, everyone saw what was happening outside. Then a second cone appeared, wider than the first, but not as bright as the previous one. Then a third, wide and bright cone appeared. The captain shrugged his shoulders and said, "Wait a minute, what do we have to report? We have to see what happens. What might this be in general? You know, people can't determine distance with their eyes, but pilots can. And yet all four of them had the same perception, an unidentifiable object hovering 40 to 50 kilometers away, and the co-pilot went ahead and started sketching the anomalies, which was incredible. But the ground was lit up by a cone of light, and everything was clearly visible. Houses, roads, how powerful is this searchlight? Then the light speed of the searchlight rises from the ground and focuses on the plane. Now they saw a dazzling white blob surrounded by concentric colored circles. The captain was still hesitating to report the incident. Then a white dot flashed and a green cloud appeared in his place. The captain then noticed the object approaching at great speed, intersecting the plane's path at an acute angle, which means he's on his way to intercept the plane. And the captain shouted to the navigator, "Tell the ground." But a strange coincidence happened. Just as the pilot was about to speak, the object suddenly stopped, and the captain felt as if he had stopped approaching. What about the controllers in Minsk, who, after considering the crew's report, said they couldn't see anything, neither on surveillance radar screens nor in the sky? And the co-pilot said angrily, "Okay, now they're gonna say we're crazy." But the green cloud suddenly dropped, past the height of the plane, then climbed vertically, swung up and down, and finally settled on the wrong side of the plane. Then, as if you were inhaling a plane, please fly with the plane at an altitude of 10,000 meters and a speed of 800 kilometers an hour. The captain muttered, "This is an honor escort. We're honored." Small points of light in the clouds flicker like lights on a 1,000-year-old tree, and then glided horizontally like fire. The pilot carefully reported everything to the ground. The controller's excited reply, "I'm watching the northern lights on the horizon." "Where are the clouds you're talking about?" The pilot described it to him, and then the controller said, "Yes, that's it." And then the cloud continued to change, and a tail grew out like a tornado, and it was wide at the top, and it was narrow at the bottom, and then it became a comma, and then the tail rose to the horizon, and then the cloud changed from an oval to a quadrangle. The co-pilot said, "Look, he's imitating us, and yes, they're being escorted by a cloud plane with a pointy nose and a pointy tail and no wings, and he's flashing yellow and green, and there seems to be a high density in the nozzle of the real plane." A stewardess came into the cockpit and said the passengers wanted to know what was flying with us. The captain sighed and told them it was some kind of cloud. The yellow was the lights of the city below, and the green was the reflection of the northern lights. At the same time, another real aircraft entered the controlled area of Minsk, namely a Tu-134 from Leningrad flying in the opposite direction of the Tu-134 from Tbilisi, and the two aircraft were not able to see the huge cloud plane from such a distance of 100 kilometers. And then the captain of the plane told me, Captain Shurka, that he couldn't see anything. By this time, the controllers in Linsk had already seen the plane and returned it to the base personnel in Leningrad. With coordinates in that direction, they should be able to see the unusual cloud plane. But it's like they're blind. They can't see anything. It wasn't until the two planes were only 15 kilometers away that we finally saw them. They then described the characteristics of the cloud plane in detail. They flew with this cloud plane all the way, and then flew over Riga and Vilnius. Controllers in these cities have pinpointed this strange twin plane over Lake Chudskoye and Lake Skovskoye. Shurka's technicians were able to estimate the size of the cloud plane, and the two long lakes are actually connected, only separated by a small piece of land. As you can see from this picture, the northern part is Lake Chudskoye with an area of 2,611 square kilometers, and the smaller part to the south is Lake Skovskoye with an area of 708 square kilometers, 40 kilometers long and 19 kilometers wide. So when the Tu-134 flew 100 kilometers to their left, and the cloud plane was on the right near Tartu. At that dense core, a beam of light appeared again from a bright spot on the cloud, hitting the ground, gliding along the ground. That is to say, he gave his own coordinates, and now he can estimate the length of the UFO. It is about the length of Skovskoyev, which means that the length of this UFO is 40 kilometers. I also know that the length of the Tu-134 aircraft is only about 37 meters. So in front of this UFO, it's almost like a fly meets an eagle. The length of our largest aircraft, the wingspan is about 70 or 80 meters. So what is the concept of 40 kilometers long UFO? It's like driving a car at a speed of 100 kilometers per hour from one end to the other, and it will take you nearly half an hour to get there. And then this plane followed them all the way to Tallinn. After they landed, the Tallinn controller told them some very strange details. The plane was not alone on surveillance radar screens at Tallinn Airport. There were two more blips on the radar, but there wasn't actually an extra plane in the sky. Besides, the two blips are continuously visible, but the blips corresponding to the aircraft in Fig. 13 and 34 first disappeared and then reappeared. It is impossible to say that you have flashed on the landing radar but not on the surveillance radar. Which means, logically, the plane should have blips on both radars. But on the G10 radar, the plane disappeared for a while, which is very strange. And the controller said there were two extra blips on the surveillance radar screen. Does that mean there were actually two UFOs? The two UFOs combined and followed the Tu-134 together, and the object could change direction in an instant and go in the opposite direction. And to be able to shoot the speed of light at such a high altitude to reach the ground is, of course, very unusual. However, if this phenomenon is local, it is limited to a certain extent. It could be an anomaly, but the size of the object that the pilot saw was enormous. Then it is natural to assume that tens of thousands of kilometers away, some global atmospheric or geophysical process may be taking place that science cannot yet explain. But for pilots, it seems right around the corner. But in the final analysis, this explanation clearly does not hold water. The pilot was able to determine the distance between the plane and the object. For this reason, we can conclude that the staff in Tallinn encountered a UFO. So why are they defending this ex-Soviet plane this time? Is it also to help humanity? Whether out of help or not, at least they didn't hurt anyone on that plane that time. So why are they escorting this plane? So let me hazard a guess. If you look at the map, you can see the path of this flight. There are nuclear power plants along the way. In fact, this area is a dense area of nuclear power plants in the former Soviet Union, and I've just highlighted some of them, and there are actually many more. Isn't that a possibility? The aliens found the plane, what hidden dangers may exist, or may hit a nuclear power plant and cause the nuclear power plant explosion, causing a major nuclear meltdown. That's why they're escorting this plane safely to its destination. So if this is the case, it may also be the work of underground civilization lizard people. Because if nuclear leakage contaminates the Earth's environment, it will also harm their living environment. So do you think they're from extraterrestrials, or do you think they're from an underground civilization called lizard people? Is it malicious or kind, or do they have some other agenda?
Thank you so much for taking the time to watch our videos. If you like our content, please don't forget to subscribe and like. It will support us to continue to create more great content.